Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. Gyro hunched over his desk, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he crunched numbers for the quarterly report. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, a constant reminder of the late hour and another day slipping away in pursuit of corporate success. As the last employee shuffled out of the office, Gyro leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. At 27, he had already climbed several rungs on the corporate ladder, but the view from the top wasn't quite what he had imagined. The satisfaction he'd expected to feel remained elusive, replaced by a gnawing emptiness that seemed to grow with each passing day. Gathering his things, Gyro made his way out of the building. The cool evening air hit his face, providing a brief respite from the stuffy office atmosphere. On a whim, he decided to take a different route home, one that led him past a row of small shops and boutiques. A weathered sign caught his eye: Timeless Treasures Thrift Store. The window display was a hodgepodge of mismatched items, from vintage lamps to well-worn books. Something compelled Gyro to step inside, the bell above the door announcing his arrival. The shop was crammed with shelves and racks, each overflowing with second-hand items. Gyro wandered aimlessly, his fingers trailing over dusty knickknacks and faded MtF. As he rounded a corner, his eyes landed on a garment that stood out from the rest. It was a skirt hanging innocuously between a pair of men's slacks and a faded denim jacket. The fabric was a deep burgundy with intricate embroidery along the hem. Gyro found himself reaching out, his fingers brushing against the soft material. "Can I help you find anything?" The shopkeeper's voice startled him, and Gyro quickly withdrew his hand. "Oh no, I'm just browsing," he mumbled, feeling a flush creep up his neck. The elderly woman smiled kindly. "That's a lovely piece, isn't it? It's been here for a while, waiting for the right person." Gyro nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the skirt. Before he could second-guess himself, he heard his own voice saying, "I'll take it." The shopkeeper's eyebrows raised slightly, but her smile never faltered. "Wonderful. I'm sure it'll make someone very happy." As Gyro paid for the skirt, his heart raced. He couldn't explain the impulse that had driven him to make the purchase, but as he left the store with the carefully wrapped package, he felt a spark of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. Back in his apartment, Gyro carefully unwrapped the skirt. The burgundy fabric seemed to shimmer in the low light of his bedroom. With trembling hands, he slipped off his work trousers and stepped into the skirt. The fabric settled around his hips, the hem brushing just below his knees. Gyro turned to look in the full-length mirror, his breath catching in his throat. The person staring back at him was both familiar and strange. The skirt accentuated curves, softening the lines of his body. For the first time in years, Gyro smiled at his reflection. He twirled experimentally, watching the skirt flare out around him. The feeling was indescribable, a mixture of freedom, excitement, and a profound sense of rightness. That night, Gyro slept more peacefully than he had in years, the burgundy skirt carefully hung in the back of his closet. Over the next few weeks, Gyro found himself returning to the thrift store, each time leaving with a new addition to his secret wardrobe. A silky blouse here, a pair of heels there. Each item was carefully selected and cherished, hidden away from the world, but treasured in private moments. As months turned into years, Gyro's collection grew, as did his comfort in expressing this hidden part of himself. In the privacy of his apartment, he would transform, shedding the confines of his masculine attire and embracing a softer, more feminine appearance. It was during one of these private sessions that the name Matilda first came to him. He, or rather she, was admiring her reflection, twirling in a floral dress, when the name simply felt right. Matilda. It rolled off her tongue, feeling more natural than Gyro ever had. However, outside the sanctuary of her apartment, Gyro maintained his masculine persona. He continued to climb the corporate ladder, his professional success a stark contrast to the turmoil and confusion he felt internally. The disparity between his public and private selves grew, creating a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Years passed, and Gyro found himself going through the motions of life. He married a woman he cared for deeply, had children he adored, but always felt a part of himself was hidden away, like the clothes in the back of his closet. As Gyro approached his 50th birthday, the weight of his secret became unbearable. The person he presented to the world felt increasingly like a costume, while Matilda, the person he was in private, felt more authentic with each passing day. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Gyro made the decision that would change everything. His wife Elena was in the kitchen, the smell of coffee wafting through the house. Their 2 children, now teenagers, were still asleep upstairs. "Elena," Gyro said, his voice trembling slightly, "can we talk?" Elena looked up from her book, concern etched on her face. "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" Gyro took a deep breath, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure Elena could hear it. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've been hiding for a very long time." Over the next hour, Gyro poured out his heart. He told Elena about the skirt he'd bought all those years ago, about the name Matilda, about the constant feeling of being trapped in the wrong skin. As he spoke, tears streamed down his face, years of pent-up emotion finally finding release. Elena listened in stunned silence, her coffee growing cold on the table between them. When Gyro finally finished speaking, the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and fears. "So," Elena said slowly, "you're telling me you want to be a woman?" Gyro nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I am a woman. I've always been. I didn't know how to say it, how to be it." Elena stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need some time to process this," she said, her voice tight with emotion. She left the room, leaving Gyro alone with the weight of his revelation. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions for the entire family. Their children, Mark and Sophia, reacted with a mixture of confusion and concern when Gyro and Elena sat them down to explain the situation. "So, does this mean we have to call you Mom now?" Mark asked, his brow furrowed. Gyro, now fully embracing the name Matilda, shook her head. "No, you can still call me Dad. I'm still the same person who raised you. I'm just being honest about who I am." Sophia, always the more sensitive of the two, reached out and took Matilda's hand. "As long as you're happy, Dad, that's what matters." The transition was not easy. Elena struggled with feelings of betrayal and confusion, questioning everything about their marriage. There were heated arguments, tears, and moments when it seemed their family might fracture beyond repair. But slowly, incrementally, they began to adapt. Elena sought counseling, both for herself and as a couple with Matilda. The children, in their own ways, came to terms with their father's identity. Mark threw himself into research, learning everything he could about gender identity and transition. Sophia became Matilda's fiercest defender, challenging anyone who dared to make a derogatory comment. As Matilda began to transition more openly, she faced challenges at work. The corporate world she had navigated so successfully as Gyro was less welcoming to Matilda. There were whispers in the hallways, uncomfortable silences in meetings, and a palpable tension that hadn't existed before. But Matilda persevered. She had spent decades building her career, and she wasn't about to let prejudice derail her now. She threw herself into her work with renewed vigor, determined to prove that her identity had no bearing on her abilities. It was during this time that Matilda found unexpected allies. Jennifer, a young intern in the accounting department, approached her one day after a particularly tense meeting. "I just wanted to say," Jennifer said, her voice low but firm, "that I think you're incredibly brave. And that presentation you gave today? Brilliant." Matilda felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, touched by the simple act of kindness. As the months passed, Matilda's confidence grew. She began to experiment more boldly with her appearance, no longer confined to the privacy of her home. She started hormone therapy, watching with a mixture of excitement and trepidation as her body slowly began to align with her true self. Elena, too, was on a journey of her own. While the initial shock of Matilda's revelation had been profound, she found herself falling in love all over again with the person her spouse was becoming. The joy that radiated from Matilda when she was truly herself was infectious, and Elena realized that this was the person she had always loved, regardless of outward appearance. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Elena turned to Matilda. "You know," she said softly, "I always wondered why Gyro seemed so distant sometimes. Like there was a part of him I couldn't reach. But now, with you, Matilda, I feel like I'm finally seeing all of you." Matilda reached out, taking Elena's hand in hers. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for staying, for trying to understand." Elena squeezed her hand. "We're in this together, always have been, always will be." As Matilda approached her 55th birthday, she looked in the mirror and truly saw herself for the first time. The face that looked back at her was softer now, her hair longer, styled in a way that framed her features. The body that had once felt like a prison now felt like home. She thought back to that first burgundy skirt, still hanging in her closet after all these years. It had been the key that unlocked a door she hadn't even known existed. Now, standing in an elegant black dress, preparing for her birthday celebration, Matilda felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The party was a small affair, just family and close friends. As Matilda made her way down the stairs, she saw the faces of those who had supported her through her journey. Elena, radiant and proud. Mark and Sophia, now young adults, beaming at their parent. Colleagues who had become friends, neighbors who had become allies. "Happy birthday, Mom," Sophia said, wrapping Matilda in a tight hug. The word mom no longer felt strange or forced. It was simply a recognition of who Matilda had always been. As the evening wore on, filled with laughter, love, and acceptance, Matilda found a quiet moment to slip away. She made her way to the bedroom, opening her closet to find that first burgundy skirt. Running her fingers over the fabric, she smiled at the memory of the person she had been, grateful for the journey that had led her to this moment. A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. "Matilda?" Elena's voice called softly. "Everything okay?" Matilda turned, the skirt still in her hands. "Just remembering," she said, holding up the garment. Elena's eyes softened with recognition. "The skirt that started it all," she said, crossing the room to stand beside her wife. "You know, I always wondered why Gyro bought that. Now I understand." Matilda carefully hung the skirt back in its place. "It was the beginning of becoming who I always was," she said. "Who I am now." Elena wrapped her arm around Matilda's waist, resting her head on her shoulder. "And who you are, my love, is beautiful." Together, they rejoined the party, Matilda's heart full of gratitude for the long and winding path that had led her to this moment. As she looked around at the faces of her loved ones, she knew that while the journey had been difficult, it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. In the years that followed, Matilda continued to flourish. Her career, after some initial turbulence, found new heights as she brought her authentic self to her work. She became an advocate for transgender rights in the corporate world, using her position to create policies that fostered inclusivity and understanding. Mark and Sophia, inspired by their parents' journey, pursued careers that allowed them to make a difference in the world. Mark became a therapist specializing in gender identity issues, while Sophia went into law, focusing on civil rights cases. Elena, too, found a new purpose. She started a support group for partners of transgender individuals, providing a safe space for people to share their experiences and find community during times of transition. As Matilda approached her 60th birthday, she looked back on the path that had led her to this point. The fears and doubts that had once consumed her seemed distant now, like half-remembered dreams. In their place was a profound sense of peace and self-acceptance. One day, while cleaning out some old boxes, Matilda came across a faded photograph. It showed a young man in a business suit, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. She barely recognized Gyro, the person she had once been. "What's that?" Elena asked, peering over her shoulder. Matilda handed her the photograph. "Someone I used to know," she said softly. Elena studied the picture, then looked up at her wife. "You know," she said, "I can see you in his eyes. That spark was always there, even if it was hidden." Matilda nodded, feeling a wave of compassion for her younger self. "I wish I could tell him it would all be okay, that he'd find his way eventually." Elena wrapped her arms around Matilda, pulling her close. "You did find your way, and I'm so glad I got to be part of that journey." As they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of a past life and the promise of the future, Matilda felt a sense of completion. The road had been long and often difficult, but it had led her to this moment, fully herself, surrounded by love, and at peace with who she was. The burgundy skirt still hung in her closet, a reminder of where she had begun. But now, it was just one piece in a wardrobe that truly reflected who she was, Matilda in all her complexity and beauty. As the sun set outside their window, casting a warm glow over the room, Matilda and Elena began to sort through the rest of the boxes. Each item they uncovered held a memory, some bittersweet, others joyful. But all of them were part of the tapestry of their life together, a life that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Matilda picked up an old notebook, its pages yellowed with age. Opening it, she found entries from her early days of questioning her identity. The words were filled with confusion and fear, but also with a glimmer of hope. "Listen to this," Matilda said, her voice soft with nostalgia. She read aloud. "Sometimes, when I'm alone, I wonder who I really am. There's a part of me that feels hidden, like a butterfly still in its chrysalis. Will I ever have the courage to emerge?" Elena's eyes glistened with tears. "You did emerge, my love, and you're more beautiful than any butterfly." Matilda closed the notebook, holding it close to her chest. "It wasn't just courage," she said. "It was having you and the kids and everyone who stood by me. You gave me the strength to be myself." As they continued to sort through the boxes, they uncovered more treasures from their shared past. There were Mark's first pair of shoes, tiny and worn, Sophia's favorite stuffed animal, its fur matted from years of love, and tucked away in a corner, a small velvet box. Matilda opened it, revealing 2 wedding rings. She and Elena had exchanged new rings when Matilda transitioned, but these, the original symbols of their commitment, had been carefully preserved. "Do you ever regret it?" Matilda asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Staying with me through all of this?" Elena took the box from Matilda's hands, removing one of the rings. With deliberate care, she slipped it onto Matilda's finger, alongside the newer ring that already rested there. "Not for a single moment," Elena said firmly. "When I married you, I married all of you, even the parts we didn't know about yet. Our love has only grown stronger through this journey." Matilda felt tears spill down her cheeks as Elena placed the second ring on her own finger. They stood there, hands clasped, the old rings nestled against the new, a tangible representation of their enduring love and commitment. As the evening wore on, Mark and Sophia arrived, having promised to help with the cleaning. The family spent hours going through old photographs and mementos, laughing at forgotten memories and marveling at how far they had come. "Hey, look at this!" Mark exclaimed, pulling out an old home video. "It's from my 10th birthday." They gathered around as Mark set up the video to play. On the screen, a younger version of their family appeared. Gyro, as Matilda had been then, was lighting candles on a cake, his movements stiff and uncomfortable in front of the camera. Matilda watched, feeling a complex mix of emotions. There was sadness for the person who had been so trapped, unable to express their true self. But there was also immense gratitude for the love that was clearly present, even then. As the video played, showing the family laughing and celebrating, Sophia reached out and took Matilda's hand. "You know," she said, "even then, I think I sensed that there was something you were holding back. I just didn't have the words for it." Matilda squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm sorry if that made things difficult for you." Sophia shook her head. Don't be sorry. You taught us the most important lesson. To be true to ourselves, no matter what. Your journey helped shape who we are. Mark nodded in agreement. It's why I became a therapist. I wanted to help other people find the courage to be themselves, just like you did. Matilda felt overwhelmed by the love and acceptance radiating from her family. She looked at Elena, who was watching her with eyes full of adoration, then at her children, who had grown into compassionate, understanding adults. I am so proud of all of you, Matilda said, her voice thick with emotion, and so grateful for your love and support. As the night grew late, Mark and Sophia bid their parents good night, leaving with boxes of childhood mementos to sort through at their own homes. Matilda and Elena were left alone, surrounded by the physical remnants of their shared history. What a life we've had, Elena mused, leaning against Matilda as they sat on the couch. Matilda nodded, running her fingers through Elena's hair. And what a life we still have ahead of us. As they sat there contemplating their past and their future, Matilda felt a sense of completeness she had never known in her younger years. The journey to self-discovery had been long and often painful, but it had led her to this moment, fully herself, surrounded by love, and excited for whatever adventures still lay ahead. The burgundy skirt that had started it all still hung in her closet. A reminder, of beginnings. But now it was just one small part of the rich, full life Matilda had built. A life of authenticity, love, and the courage to be truly herself. As the clock struck midnight, ushering in a new day, Matilda and Elena shared a tender kiss. It began softly, a gentle press of lips that carried the weight of decades, years of love, of challenges faced together, and of a future still shimmering with possibility. Matilda's hands rested lightly on Elena's shoulders, her fingers brushing against the familiar softness of her wife's. Elena leaned into her, her palms warm against Matilda's waist, the old, and new wedding rings glinting faintly in the dim light of their living room. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.